And I'm very passionate and very dedicated to collaborating with parents and with the ESE team to make sure that your child is getting the education, the right class placement or class placements if they're in middle or high school, the therapies that they're eligible for, whether it's speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, could also be physical therapy. And also, are they getting the right instructional strategies in the classes and also the accommodations that they need in order to learn? So we're going to look at the first slide, and I figured I'd start with a little humor. Here is Homer with his big eyes open and his mouth open, and he's looking at something that is totally confusing. So we could kind of say when parents look at an IEP, sometimes this could be your facial expression that you're also very confused and that you need guidance. The outline of the presentation is going to be, first we'll talk about what's called response to intervention, or for short RTI, and it has what's called tiers. Then we're going to discuss what the IEP is. What is an IEP? We're going to go into the IEP process. We're going to talk about what's called program eligibilities, which are stated on the IEP. You as the parent, who is an integral member of the IEP team. And I made up a hypothetical case study so you could relate to the IEP process better. We'll also touch upon the Florida standards and something called access points. And at the very end, there will be time for you to ask questions, and hopefully I will have the answers. First thing, what is response to intervention, RTI? Students who are struggling in school are first considered for response to intervention. It has 3 tiers, which means as you progress through the tiers, additional instruction will be given in either specific academic domains, or it could also be in speech and language, and sometimes also behavioral support. These tiers are provided in the general education class, not the ESE class. So tier 1 would be where the teacher or the speech and language pathologist goes into the class and works with the entire class. Tier 2 would be a small group of children. And then tier 3, which is the most intense, would be one-on-one intensive instruction. So while the teacher is doing the RTI or the speech therapist is doing the RTI, she's collecting data. And this shows that the student possibly has not achieved the desired level of progress in response to these tiers. The student is then referred to the ESE team for comprehensive evaluations. What is an IEP? So a student with a disability or disabilities who is eligible for exceptional student education, ESE, will have an individualized education plan, which is the IEP, and it's generated by the IEP team. And you, the parent, is a member of that team. So this is a plan developed to ensure that a child with an identified disability or disabilities who is attending either elementary school or middle school or high school receives specialized instruction with clear goals, specialized accommodations for that specific child, related services, again, the therapies, a collaborative approach, progress monitoring, legal protection. The IEP is mandated by law, so there's legal protection, an annual review where you review the IEP once a year. However, you can review it at any time. You as the parent can always request an IEP meeting. You may want to make some modifications to the IEP. Then what's called a triennial evaluation. Every 3 years, your child is eligible to be reevaluated by the school psychologist, by the speech and language pathologist, if your child is getting speech and language therapy, by the occupational therapist, if your child is getting OT. So again, the meetings can be more than just once a year. The IEP process. Your child is referred to the ESC coordinator of the school. Every school has an ESC coordinator. Soon I'll be discussing a hypothetical referral case. You as the parent will meet with the members of the ESC team, the ESC coordinator, the classroom teacher or teachers, the school psychologist, the speech and language pathologist if warranted, and or the occupational or physical therapists. At this time, if the ESC team determines that an evaluation is warranted, specific testing such as I stated before, a psychoeducational will be done, possibly a speech and language assessment, possibly an OT assessment, possibly a behavioral assessment. In addition, classroom observations will be conducted by the team members. So your child will be will be observed in his class or classes. Once testing is completed, you will then be invited to what's called an eligibility meeting. At this meeting, it will be determined if your child is eligible for an IEP. This is important, the presence of a disability does not automatically guarantee a child will qualify for an IEP. Again, we have to look at the testing results, we have to look at the classroom observations, we have to look at quizzes and tests. So it's a big picture that we have to look at. Next is program eligibilities on the IEP. Again, to be eligible for an IEP, the child has to have a disability or disabilities, but what's important, the disability or disabilities must have what's called an educational impact. What this means is that the specific disability or disabilities are having a negative effect on your child's learning. In order to make a decision whether your child is eligible, as I stated before, the ESC team will consider the evaluation findings, the classroom observations, standardized tests, and daily work, quizzes, tests, classwork, and homework. The common program eligibilities are, for a child below kindergarten level, is developmental delay. Kindergarten and above could be autistic spectrum disorder, ASD, specific learning disability, SLD, other health impaired, OHI, language impairment or speech impairment, and the way they stated is occupational therapy, but obviously under that there's specific deficit areas. All right, something else humorous. Honey, don't forget your angry eyes. We have an IEP meeting today. You know how they always frightened by them. Well, we don't have to enter the IEP meeting with angry eyes, but we do have to be prepared when we go to the meeting so we know what questions to ask, what our child is eligible for. But I figured I'd put a little funny thing in. All right, here you are. Parent is a member of the IEP team. Remember that you are a member, an integral member. Parents often feel as though they do not have a say in their child's IEP. However, by law, again, legal mandated, parents have the final say. It is your right to be an active participant by giving your input, asking your questions regarding all aspects of the IEP. You are considered an equal member of your child's IEP team. You will be given a copy, and some of you have been given this. It's called the Procedural Safeguards. It outlines your rights as that integral member of the IEP team. It's a document that ensures that throughout this IEP process, there is a smooth transition from the referral to the ESC team to the provision of services. The IEP is invalid until you, the parent, gives your approval, and it has to be a written approval. So the IEP is a legally binding document, and if they do not follow the IEP and implement it, they are in violation of the IEP mandation. All right, here's the hypothetical case study that I made up. First of all, we're going to talk about the reason that the student was referred. We're going to talk about evaluations conducted, the educational impact, and those eligibilities. We're going to talk about the present levels of performance, which is strengths and weaknesses, and also very clear goals that are established. The supplemental aids and services, this is where the accommodations and instructional strategies will be listed. The special education services, again, the therapies, and also the state and district-wide assessments. All right, so I made up a third grade student. The student was referred after having the RTI, the response to intervention, and he was on tier 3. He had the one-to-one intervention, and he was not making progress. The data was showing that he was not making progress, and he was struggling in class. So he was referred by the teacher, the classroom teacher, to the ESC coordinator. He exhibited difficulties with reading, decoding, and reading comprehension, following verbal, oral, and written directions, being able to communicate with the teacher and his peers. A lot of struggle with writing, not just fine motor, but actually writing grammatical sentences and making a paragraph, how to organize the information and sequence the information in a coherent paragraph. Difficulty with short-term memory. Very hard for this student to hold on to the information and then be able to execute a response, whether it be verbally or in writing. Difficulty with math computation, and math word problems. And also had difficulty copying information from one source to another, from the smartboard to the paper, or from one paper to another paper. Evaluations. The parents and the IEP team reviewed the specific evaluations that were conducted. So there's a period of time where the evaluations are being done. And then there is I'm going to ask my colleague here who worked in the school system, but now works at Progressive Pediatric. It is, do you want to?
If it is a new referral, they have 60 days to do the testing. If it is not a new referral and it's a reevaluation, the time frame is longer. I believe it's 90 days, but it may be longer than that. I'm not sure.
Okay, so it is up to you as the parent to really be aware of this time frame. It's going to be 60 school days, not calendar days. Okay, because if they're not finished by then, you need to speak to the ESC coordinator. So the psychoeducational evaluation that was conducted by the school psychologist revealed that this child, this third grade student, exhibits specific learning disabilities in reading, both decoding and reading comprehension, in written expression, remember writing a paragraph, and in math, computation, and word problems. This child has difficulty attending to and processing verbal information, meaning the teacher is talking, that's an oral presentation, and they have difficulty, again, holding on to the information in their short-term memory and then formulating a response. Children very often with attentional deficit disorder or attentional deficit hyperactivity disorder will experience this, where they have difficulty attending, focusing, and even if they're trying to focus, processing the information. And that's where the accommodations come into play, where the teacher needs to either A, reduce the amount of information, simplify the information, restate the information, or clarify the information. But we will talk about that a little later on. The child's processing speed for simple and routine visual information was extremely low on the psychoeducational evaluation. This results in difficulty performing tasks quickly and efficiently. So there are children who have accommodations on their IEP that state, give this child more or additional processing time due to this. The next evaluation that was conducted for this third grade student is the speech and language evaluation, which revealed a significant language impairment in the areas of receptive, which is understanding language, and expressive, which is using language, in the area of vocabulary. Every academic, even gym class, is language loaded. So a child with a language impairment is going to have difficulty in all his or her classes. Also, this evaluation revealed difficulty with the language processing, whether it was orally presented or whether it was written. They have difficulty with what's called conceptual knowledge and use. A lot of children have difficulty with time concepts. For example, if you tell your child, after dinner, then you can go play softball. What does after mean? Before you have dinner, you can play softball. What does before mean? Those are time concepts. I want you to put your knapsack, your book bag, beneath the table. What does beneath mean? That's called a spatial concept. They may know what under means, but another word for under is beneath. Also, this child exhibits difficulty with grammar, understanding. When do I use past tense? When do I use present tense? When do I use future tense? And syntax, which means how do I put these words in the proper order to formulate a grammatical, syntactical, appropriate sentence. So basically, children need to learn the grammar and syntax rules. This child also has a difficulty following oral directions and written directions. Then the area called pragmatics. Pragmatics, many children on the spectrum have difficulty with pragmatics. That is using language for different purposes. For example, we use language to request. Can I have a glass of water? We use language to comment. Did you see that big blue van drive by? We use language to greet. Hello, how are you? Pragmatics also involves following the rules of conversation. There are children, not just on the spectrum, that will just talk about something that they're interested in. So they're not listening to the other child or children they may be talking to, and also being able to take what's called the listener perspective, meaning what is the listener basically trying to communicate? So it's the rules, when to be the speaker, when to be the listener, when to engage in a topic that would be of interest to both of you or to the group that you're talking to. Again, if you're going to speak about a topic that the other child or children aren't interested in, they're going to be either walking away or putting their heads down. And then also using appropriate communication in different social situations. The occupational therapy evaluation revealed for this third grade student deficiencies in visual perception, how this child is perceiving what is on the smartboard or on the paper, difficulty with recognizing familiar words, spelling words, with visual tracking, being able to, if there's a short paragraph this child has to read, be able to stay on the right sentence. That's called tracking, and being able to sequence. So basically, if they have visual tracking issues, they're going to lose their place when reading. And guess what? There goes the reading comprehension down. Then they don't understand what they're reading. This child has difficulty copying from one source to another. So in middle school or high school, if the agenda is on the smartboard, they're going to have difficulty copying what's on the agenda to their agenda book. So some children will be allowed to use their phone to take a picture of the agenda, or the agenda will be put on Google Classroom for the children. This child also demonstrates difficulty organizing the information on a page. So there's something called, some of you parents may know, a graphic organizer, which helps them possibly put the details in little bubbles, put the main idea at the top, put other significant information, and then take all this information from this organizer and be able to put it into, again, a coherent, well-organized, well-sequenced, well-grammatical paragraph. Here's the key words: educational impact. It's determined at the eligibility meeting by answering the following, and this is stated right on the IEP. Based on review of the evaluations, does the student meet eligibility criteria according to special programs and procedures? This third grader, the answer is yes. At this time, does the severity of the student's disability indicate the need for special instruction and services? Again, the answer for this child is yes. So if yes, the team has to write the adverse effect that it's having on educational performance. So for this third grader, it is stated, the student's deficits in processing visually and also auditorily, hearing, listening, adversely impacts his reading skills, reading comprehension, and math skills. The impairments in receptive, understanding, and expressive, using, talking, language, and communication, visual perception, what's called the working memory, the short-term memory, holding it on in their memory to be able to integrate the information and formulate a response, and processing speed, negatively impacts the student's learning in the third grade general education classroom. Eligibilities. This child's program eligibilities, sometimes it's called classifications, but here in Florida, they do call it eligibilities. This third grade student's program eligibilities are specific learning disability, language impairment, and occupational therapy. Now we have on the IEP a section called present levels of performance and goals. So based on results of the evaluations, the goals for the child will be written in different domains. We have the curriculum and instruction domain, and this includes reading, language arts, and math. Then we have the social emotional behavior domain. This touches upon social skills and behaviors. We have the independent functioning domain. This is how they get around the campus. Can they navigate the campus independently? Organization and self-care, able to go to the bathroom and take care of themselves. And communication, which is speech and language. The following information is included in each of those domains: the student's strengths and abilities, how the student's disabilities affect involvement and also progress in the general education curriculum, priority educational needs, which are the main areas to be addressed, and annual measurable goals. The goals have to be very, very precise so they are measurable, and the teachers and the speech and language pathologists and the OT and PT can take data to show this goal has been mastered or this goal has not been mastered. So we'll talk about first the curriculum and instruction domain. So for this third grade student, we're going to see what his strengths and abilities are. In the classroom, this third grade student can answer what's called literal comprehension questions for short reading passages. Literal, what does that mean? It means it's stated right there in the reading passage or passages. The girl is riding her red bike. What color is the bike? Red. So it's right there. He benefits from teacher prompts and cues to use reading strategies that are being taught in the classroom. In writing, he can use that graphic organizer I spoke of to create an outline, and from that outline, be able to formulate a written paragraph or paragraphs. In math, he can do basic math facts. On the IEP, it states, describe how the student's exceptionality, his specific learning disability, his language impairment, and his OT deficits affects involvement in the general education curriculum. Stated for this child, deficits in auditory processing, listening, and visual perception processing adversely affect his reading skills, including reading comprehension and math problem solving. Continued in this domain, we have ELA, language arts, English language arts, decoding, being able to read the written word, reading comprehension, understanding what he's reading, and then being able to write a paragraph. For math, word problem comprehension. This child is struggling with word problem comprehension, and a lot of children who have language deficits or a language impairment will have difficulty with word problem comprehension because it's so language loaded. So the annual measurable goal, and again, there could be more than one goal. I'm just giving you an example. The annual measurable goal would be the student will utilize the CUBES strategy. That stands for C for circle, U for underline, B for box, E for eliminate, and S for solve. Using this strategy to solve multi-step word problems with teacher assistance, given 10 multiple step word problems at or with 70% accuracy over 5 documented opportunities. As you can see, this is so specific because the goals have to be able to be measured and data needs to be collected. The next domain is the independent functioning. This third grade student's strengths and abilities, based on teacher observation and classroom performance, the student is able to independently function across the campus, knows where the gym is, knows where the cafeteria is, knows where the nearest bathroom is. He's able also to advocate for himself when he needs help. Describe the student's exceptionality. Student's ability to copy from the smartboard is significantly slow and below grade level. Remember, this child has processing speed weaknesses, and just being able to copy from one source to another is difficult. And that could be fine motor issues, visual perception issues that impact this. The domain we have is visual tracking. So the annual measurable goal. The student will increase his writing speed. This is under OT, occupational therapy. The student will increase his writing speed with consistent legibility to 40 letters per minute, given a model to copy from, and given topic with no more than 2 visual and verbal prompts with 80% accuracy. Again, look how precise that is. 40 letters, 2 visual and verbal prompts, 80% accuracy. Again, it has to be measurable. Data collection has to be done. Oh, you stated. I have Lori Goldberg here just to interject a minute.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to mention that children who have OT goals, there is no separate domain for OT. So if your child has OT goals, they are typically put into either the ELA for the handwriting or the independent functioning for the self-care skills. So you will not see a separate section like you do for speech and language.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Next slide. Oh, my domain, communication. Okay. Strengths and abilities. Student can use basic descriptors for target words. For example, this child is able to say, oh, the big truck. Big is a descriptor. Oh, I like to eat a blue piece of candy. Blue is a descriptor, very basic. He communicates in very short sentences to request what he wants, to make a comment, and also to greet others. So we have students' impairments in the areas of receptive language, understanding language, and expressive language speaking negatively impact his ability to communicate effectively in a general education setting with the teacher or teachers and with his peers. To improve receptive and expressive language skills. So the annual measurable goal is student will state at least 2 different meanings of a word. A multiple meaning word. For example, Ms. Goldberg, give us a few multiple meaning words.
Yes. So for instance, the word bear, B-E-A-R. One bear is an animal. Another bear is being able to tolerate something, that you need to bear it. That's one example of a multiple meaning word.
Right. And in the English language, we have a lot of words that have multiple meanings. Some are spelled the same way and some are spelled differently with different meanings. So the student will state at least 2 different meanings of a word, a multiple meaning word, given no more than 1 verbal or visual cue prompt at or with 80% accuracy. Okay, now we're up to, which is stated again on the IEP, it's titled Supplemental Aids and Services. This includes classroom accommodations, program modifications, which is instructional modifications, and specific learning strategies. This is extremely significant. Okay, so for this 3rd grade student, it is stated on his IEP, since he has trouble following oral directions and written directions, directions may be repeated, simplified, and clarified when needed. Preferential seating this child needs to ensure that auditory, listening, and visual access is occurring. So being closer to the teacher, this child needs to be in the front of the classroom, wherever the teacher is giving instruction. Also, to be able to pair visual representations and/or manipulatives with verbal instruction. Again, this child has auditory processing issues. He needs visuals. He needs manipulatives in math to understand the concepts and the vocabulary. The special education services that this student is eligible for again, based on the testing, based on the observations. Direct language therapy 2 times a week, which would be a total of 60 minutes per week. Occupational therapy 1 time per week, a total of 30 minutes per week. And specialized instruction in all the academic areas, meaning this child needs to be in a self-contained ESC classroom. He cannot function in the general education class. This would be, of course, 5 times per week. State and district-wide assessments, we'll just touch upon this. The ESC team has to answer 4 questions stated in the IEP when determining whether state and district assessments or the Florida alternate assessment is the appropriate assessment. The student who will be participating in the state and district assessments can have testing accommodations. For example, again, test directions can be repeated, they can be clarified, they can be summarized. Also, another accommodation for testing is 100% additional time. They need more time to finish the test. Those are just examples. Florida standards, I'm sure you heard these words, and something called access points. I'm not sure if you heard those words. If a student meets criteria to follow the Florida standards curriculum, he is expected to take the FSA. That is the Florida Standards Assessment. If the student does not meet the criteria for the Florida Standards curriculum, he is then exempt from taking the FSA and will take what's called the Florida Alternate Assessment, FAA. The FAA is fully aligned to the access points, which is the Florida Alternate Academic Achievement Standards. The FAA includes 2 components. You have a performance task, and then you have a data folio. Access points reflect the key concepts of the Florida Standards curriculum, but at a very reduced level of complexity. And again, many children need this. The data folio is designed for students who do not have a formal mode of communication and are functioning at pre-academic levels. So this would be for the child who's virtually nonverbal. I'm not sure why Mr. Barth always feels compelled to bring an advocate to the IEP meeting. Well, he doesn't need all of these advocates. If you feel that you need assistance in advocating for your child, I am an advocate. So I'm just going to give you my contact information and then we'll go to questions and answers. Okay. I do a free initial 30-minute consultation over the phone to determine if you want my services, how I can help you. Again, Adrienne Wolf, special education advocate, speech and language pathologist. This is my email, adriennewolf@gmail.com. And my number, you can see it's 973. 9 years ago, I moved to Florida from New Jersey, but I kept my number. Can't take the New Jersey, New York girl out of me. 973-229-6022. We'll keep this up for a minute. If you want to jot down the information, and then we'll go to questions and answers.